I think it's really good for us to understand so that we don't feel like, this is a process that shouldn't be happening, that we're doing something wrong, that the franchisee is doing something wrong. It's like, look, when we hit these stages, it's going to be nice to have this insight and say, you know what? It's just a normal part of the process. They're going through this. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Rick, what's going on, man?
It's Friday.
It is Friday.
I'm sad because my work week's over. I'm not the TGI. I'm the TGIM guy.
Thank God it's Monday, guy.
Yeah. I'm that guy.
Is that
Sunday
you?
night, I'm stoked. I go to bed extra early so I can hurry up and wake up like Christmas Eve.
You do, huh?
I do. I really do.
It must be fun to hang out with on the weekends.
I am amazing to hang out with at all days of the week, but especially on a Sunday night.
All
Keep
right.
that in mind. All right, you ready for some Did You Knows?
Yeah, you're straight up cheating today.
Well, you know what? Like, I've got a lot on my mind today, so I'm gonna. If you guys are watching, I've got my phone in hand because I got a couple of things in notes, and I just couldn't write them all down. I didn't have time, so I had to bring my phone in. But this one I had because I'd have to write all this down. So there's an actual brain condition that gives you an uncontrollable urge to make puns.
What?
Yeah. So this is me, and I must have had some brain damage at some point. It probably came from like boxing and football. But if you've damaged the right frontal lobe of your brain, you can develop something, and this is a German word, so I'm going to butcher it. Witzelstute.
You have Witzelstute.
I do, and it's part of I've got some brain issues apparently, and it's basically German for and I'm air quoting joke addiction. So this condition causes a compulsive need to constantly make up or tell jokes, even in the middle of the night or during an important interview. I think I might have this. Witchelsnitch. What is it? Wiener Schnitzel?
You have Wiener Schnitzel, too?
Yeah, Farfignugan. I've got that from getting punched in the brain too many times,
I
apparently.
thought you were just a dude.
Right. Well, yeah, that could be it. Maybe all guys have problems with their right frontal lobe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that's actually proven.
Yeah.
It doesn't develop, right? And then
Apparently
it takes longer.
Gets up to about 6th grade level, and then
You're still like 16 years old.
Yeah, younger than that. 12 at best. 12 at best. So anyway, I have Witzelstute.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Did you know that polar bears have black skin and that their fur is see-through? It's not white.
So they can reflect the sun or absorb the sun and stay warm?
From the light, it actually reflects and it makes it look white. But it's
Really?
actually see-through.
That's weird. That's kind of a mind screw. So what happens if you put them like in the dark? Like the sun wasn't shining on them, and you put them under infrared light. What would that look like?
I don't know. I didn't like do an experiment on it, bro.
Jeez, Matt, prepare yourself. man.
Prepare. You're reading from something.
Yeah, but at least I've got my facts straight. You're like, oh, polar bears are see-through. I'm like, well, how come I can see them? You're like, I don't know.
I mean, you've seen a lot of polar bears in the dark?
I have. I like to travel to the Arctic and put polar bears under infrared light.
Yeah. You know what the most dangerous animal in the world is?
Water buffalo. Mosquito.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Nailed
killed
it.
more people than anything.
Yeah, but that was according to the CDC, so.
What do they know? They've been lying to us for years. Are you ready to do some real talking?
Real. Let's go.
All right. So today we're going to talk about, you guys, the 6 stages of franchise relationships. This is an interesting topic because we are relatively new to franchising as far as the relationships. I mean, you have to have been in it for a certain amount of time to have some of these things come to fruition. So it was an interesting read. I think it's a good outlook on franchising overall for both the franchisor, which would be us, and the franchisee, which would be our franchise partners. And it was written by a guy named Greg Nathan. Now, Greg Nathan is a guy out of Australia. He's got a great book called The Franchisee Factor. And it's basically how to understand the relationship. And this is really important, especially for you as the head of, club ops and franchise business coaching. What is the relationship between franchisor and franchisee, right? And it's unique. It's very unique because it's like, these are entrepreneurs. They own their own business.
Yep.
They're responsible for it, but yet they have to follow guidelines and sort of stay within the guardrails while also being somewhat independent. So it's an interesting relationship, right? And so Greg, in his book, The Franchisee Factor, basically spells out the 6 stages of what a franchisee goes through. Now, I'm not sure if they always go through them, if they're always linear or whatever, but we're going to rattle them off today. It's your first somewhat exposure to this book. I've already read it. and get your feedback since you're the one that's dealing a lot with franchisees. I think in some of the initial conversations we had this morning, you're like, that hasn't happened to us yet. So maybe it doesn't happen every time. But I just think it's an interesting conversation, and I like the expectations that it sets for both the franchisees. So if you're an Alloy franchisee, this would be good to hear. As an Alloy franchisor, it helps us understand these different emotional stages that we go through.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it'll be all good. So I'll just rattle off the stages first. There's 6 of them, and they are titled, and they all rhyme. So it's the Glee stage, the Fee stage, the Me stage, the Free stage, the See stage, and the We stage.
Yeah.
Right. Now you repeat those back to me very quickly.
Glee, fee, me, free, we see, see me.
You sell seashells down by the seashore, right? That kind of thing. So 6 distinct stages that franchisees will go through, and they can go through them in different timelines, and they can skip stages, and they can move to one and move back. And this is all just directives from the book, right? First one's the Glee stage. So I'll read the little paragraph that they have in the book that's kind of a descriptor, and it's written from the point of view of the franchisee. And it says, I'm very happy with the relationship. I have a franchisor. They obviously care about my success and have delivered all they have said. I'm excited about my new business and full of hope for the future. So this would be obviously early on when the franchisee first signs the franchise agreement, and it can last anywhere after that from 3 to maybe 12 months, right?
Yep.
And I think it makes sense, right? Like you're always excited. You know, we've talked about this before. What is it? I can't remember. We did a whole podcast on this Harvard professor, which basically there's a phenomenon named after her, and I can't recall it right now, but it essentially means everything in the middle stinks. Like you're very excited at the start. Everybody loves a happy ending. The middle is not fun. It's called the messy middle because everything has a 4-letter word in it, which is work, right? And I think it's natural then, so it would make sense that the Glee stage would make sense. It would happen early. You signed your franchise agreement. You have all these big ideas and aspirations of where you're going to end up. Super exciting.
Yeah,
right?
Everything's new, right?
It is.
You know, every like especially for operators or owners that we have that haven't been in the fitness realm, like everything's brand new. So it's exciting. Everything, oh, that's new. They're learning.
Right. Yep. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's the understanding, like we've sold them the promise that we're here to support you, right? We've created this turnkey business model. We're going to give you some guidelines, and you're going to take this business model into your local market and help people. And, if you run the thing right, you're going to get return on your investment, and it's like a win-win, right? It's a great business to be in. So we all get that. Mm-hmm. Now, this can last, again, anywhere between 3 to 12 months. Now, the next stage is called the Fee stage. Now things are sort of maturing in the relationship a bit. Again, I don't know if and this is what I want to hear from you today. I was kind of glad that you're new to this concept or this 6 stages, because you're the one that has the most contact with franchisees. And I'd like to hear, like, have you experienced this at all? And what does it look like, right? So the next one's the Fee stage. It says, although I'm making money, these royalty payments are really taking the cream off of the crop. What am I getting for my money? Now, this is the only one that we did discuss pre-podcast, and you had mentioned to me, you asked me, have you ever heard that from a franchisee? And I have not heard that. How about you as a franchise coach?
No, I haven't at all.
I think it's questions, the internal questions that might be asked, like, what am I getting for my money? That kind of idea. And I think it's a natural progression to go from like, hey, I'm super excited. The fact is, you are the entrepreneur. It is your business. You are running the business. And so at some point you can start to say, like, what am I getting for all of this? And you forget that there's a whole tech package put together, that there's an obscene amount of time and energy put into giving you this vehicle that you're now putting into market and, ideally being very successful with it, right?
I think it's like, when people, as you grow with your business and spend more time, you start to understand things better. One of those being your financials. That's probably where I foresee this coming in. You start seeing like, all right, here's like, oh, we have this chunk that's coming in. Nice to have that, right? I think that's probably where the Fee stage comes.
Yeah, exactly. You start to, one of our requirements is that you report your monthly financials each month. One of the reasons we do that is so that you also are staying on top of your monthly financials. But if you start seing these royalties and these tech fees, it can be easy to be like, what are we paying these people for? Like, we're doing all the work, right?
Okay. Oh, you're skipping stages, man.
Wait, am I? Am I?
That's the next one.
All right, so just about the fees, all right? And look, this is I don't want this to come off as negative. What I think is interesting about this is natural. And so the ultimate message, you guys, is we're not experiencing a lot of this because we're relatively new. So most of ours are still in the Glee stage, right? It's like, all right, cool. But if you do, if you're a franchisee and you start feeling this, it's natural. If we start to detect that franchisees are feeling or saying these things, it's natural. That's the key, is to understand that this is perfectly normal.
Right.
That's the overwhelming message of today's podcast, right?
Self-awareness, right? And we're better off knowing, being lookout. If you're getting into franchising, you're better off knowing, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. It's a little bit like, if you want to parallel it to the actual business that we're in, which is the fitness business, like we've been in that so long, it's very easy for us to understand the stages that a client goes through. You do a ton of really good content and coaching around this. Like, hey, somebody comes in, they're like you put out a piece on our internal pages yesterday about like the clients, creating these roadblocks and all these I can't reasons, right? And it's your job to give them a obvious solution that teaches them that they can, right? Whatever that may be. It's no different. We could probably map out the stages for that, and it would be similar to what we're mapping out here, right? Yep. Just a little different, but a little different type of relationship. Now, the next stage, so we went fee, now we're at the me stage. The descriptor of this, again, it's written through the lens of what a franchisee would say. Yes, I'm successful, but my success is a result of my hard work. I could probably be just as successful without my franchisor, right? So that would be the me stage. This is a natural tendency, to take credit for the good things. It's in psychology, it's known as the attribution effect or the self-serving bias.
Right.
And it's just a natural phenomenon to feel like, well, I'm doing all the work.
Yeah, I'm doing everything. Why am I giving y'all anything?
I'm the one in my market. I'm the one servicing all these customers. I'm the one that's got, the risk on this. I've got a guarantee on this lease. I'm doing all this stuff. It's not surprising. And the thing is, like, it's as long as we understand that it's a natural progression of things, I think we're going to be good. The franchisor usually at this stage, according to these stages, will start to receive some criticism. And it will come from a place of like, hey, I'm doing all this work, right? So like maybe you're on a coaching call in the future and it hasn't happened yet, but you're doing all this work and they're thinking like, you're telling them, hey, listen, don't put this marketing material out until you get it approved by us first. Like that's a little bit off brand. And it feels like I'm over here just trying to run my business. Leave me alone. I'm doing all the work, right? That kind of idea. Right. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. The next one is the free stage. This is described, again, written through the lens of the franchisee. It says, I really don't like all of these restrictions my franchisor is putting on me, the way I run my business. I feel frustrated and annoyed at their constant interference. I want to be able to do my own thing and express my own ideas. Have you seen any of that yet?
No, I mean, this is, I'm sure this will come up eventually, like, somewhere, but it's, we're in such early on stages. They're just learning the ropes. But as somebody gets more experience, kind of like the Bruce Lee, like a kick is a kick, a punch is a punch. Then you start learning new techniques and stuff, and you want to bring that into your business.
Great analogy.
But then we'll have to bring them back to like, no, there's a reason we got to this point in the franchise. We've done all that. We've been around for 31 years. So I foresee maybe that a little bit, but no, not at this point.
Yeah, and the way that this is wrapped up, and again, there's a whole book written on this, but it says at this stage, the franchisee will either get bogged down in the resentment and continue to bicker with the franchisor, or revert back to the me stage with intermittent but harmless grumbling, or move to the next stage, the quantum leap, which is the C stage. So that's what's coming up next, right? So now we're on the C stage. Here's how, again, written through the lens of the franchisee. I guess I can see the importance of following the franchise system. I do acknowledge the value of my franchisor support services. I can see that if we all did our own thing, standards would drop and we would lose the very things that give us the competitive edge.
Yeah, it's coming full circle, right? Come back like, all right, maybe you guys are right.
Well, and the thing is, if everyone on both sides, because we're in a partnership, right? And partnerships aren't easy, but they can be if everyone understands the expectations. So if you can get from the, if you can make that quantum leap from the free stage to the C stage, like just know that it's helping the franchisee business and the franchisor. So it's sort of our job to understand what they're going through and sort of shepherd them through that process. And it's their obligation, if you will, to be mature about it and to move into that next stage, right? So this says, the franchisor needs to be really open about involving the franchisees in future planning. I think we're really open for that now. I mean, we're not in this stage with a lot of folks. And by the way, these aren't always linear as far as like the timeline. It's not like it takes everyone 3 years to go through all the stages. Some people go through it in a year. Some people, it's a 10-year agreement. So some people, they might go through this in 10 years, right? The fact is there's going to be parts and pieces of this that are going to exist in all of our relationships with our franchise partners.
Yep.
And so again, it reads, franchisor might need to be more involved with the franchisee in planning future planning and appreciating their specific needs. If the franchise system has been managed fairly and effectively, the franchisee will generally come around to seeing that without consistency and adherence to the systems, the strength of the entire group would be lost. It is this shift in the perception that characterizes the C stage. So this is sort of the maturing of the relationship where it's like, all right, super excited. Oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. I'm doing all the work. Why aren't you guys doing this? Why am I paying these fees? I'm doing everything to like, okay, I get it. Like this, there is something here. It is helping me. Let's move forward together. And then the last one is what they call the we stage. And this is really where you're cooking with oil. So I think as a franchisor, it'll be our job to get people through these stages as smoothly as possible to get them to the we stage as quickly as possible. And this is stated again through the lens of the franchisee. We need to work together to make the most of our business relationship. I need some specific assistance in certain areas to develop my business, but I also have some ideas that I want my franchisor to consider. And think about the word we. I mean, it's our stronger together. It's basically what we're based on. Now we're working together, right, to move this thing forward. Again, at the end, franchisees who have negotiated their way through the franchise relationship minefield to the we stage are a franchise network's greatest asset. So it's to our benefit to get them there and to their benefit as well, right? They will often be quiet achievers who keep one eye on profit and one eye on cultivating healthy business relationships, not just with the franchisor, but with their suppliers, peers, and of course their customers, right? I've had this entire process described by a guy named Cameron Harold, who's just a really good. He cut his teeth with like college pro painters. He was the number 2 franchisee when he was in college for them. And he was the guy that said, I just followed the systems. It said in the manual, buy yellow key rings. I bought yellow key rings, and he was number 2 overall. His sister then came along behind him a few years later and became the number 1 franchisee in the system. You know what she did? She just followed the system. So he kind of got it early on. Then he became the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, took them from like, a few to like, 800-900 locations, right? And sold that out. But he parallels this 6 stages of franchise relationship as a parent-child relationship. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term. It's not like we're working with children. I'm not saying that. But there are a lot of parallels in the sense that we're trying to like have a little bit of oversight and put some controls in place. And we've got people who want to spread their wings and do their own thing in some cases. And so if you think about that, like when you're born as an infant, like your parents are like everything to you. I mean, you can't eat without them. You love them. It's like they hold you. It's amazing, right? Yep. But you know what happens? You get to be 2, 3 years old, and it's like me. Put me down. I can do this. I want to do this, and you don't want them to touch the hot stove, and they're going to throw a fit and get upset about it. So it's like, all right, there's that stage, and then they're going to evolve into teenagers, and everybody knows. At least at some, my kids were good. I know there's great teenagers out there, but I think it's pretty stereotypically common for teenagers to be like, my parents are complete idiots. They're out of touch. They're not cool, whatever. They don't know what I'm going through, like we didn't also. They don't know me. They don't know what it's like to be a teenager, that kind of thing. So that would be a good parallel to the sort of the me and free stage, right?
Right.
Then you get to your early 20s, and it's a little bit like Mark Twain said, somewhere between 18 and 22, my dad got a lot smarter. It's like, yeah, you start to be like, okay, fine. This would be the C stage. I see it. I get it. Like we're working together. This is good, right? Then in the parallel of life, you get into your late 20s, early 30s. You might have a couple of kids, and you're like, wow, now I totally get what my parents, were trying to teach me and why they did the things they did, because now I have my own kids, and I'm going through the same journey, right? And it doesn't mean that like you want to hang out with your parents every weekend, right? But it still means that you totally understand what they did for you. You appreciate it more, and you're really grateful that both you guys are, kind of on this same path, that they put you on that path. So I thought that was a really interesting parallel. But there are probably some truths to all these stages. Maybe some get skipped. Maybe some move in and out of these. You move forward one and back one. But I think it's good for franchisees to hear it. And I think it's really good for us to understand so that we don't feel like, this is a process that shouldn't be happening, that we're doing something wrong, that the franchisee is doing something wrong. It's like, look, when we hit these stages, it's going to be nice to have this insight and say, you know what? It's just a normal part of the process. They're going through this. Right.
I mean, the cool part of, we've done enough now to see, different stages, obviously in the early growth, when somebody comes to like say franchise training, it's like, everything's brand new and they don't even really understand yet why I'm telling you have to follow these operating procedures. But once they get into it and they start doing it, it all starts to click. And that's the fun part, right? It's like, oh, all right, now I see why you guys did this. This makes sense. When initially it was like, why would I do that? That's dumb.
Exactly. So yeah, and I'm sure that, I would love to revisit this like a year from now, because we'll have then 40-ish locations, maybe up to 50 open by the end of this year even. So it'll be fun to sort of revisit these stages and see if we have a different outlook on it and whether they hold true, whether we see them happening a lot or not at all. But I'm pleased with our team in the sense that we look at these things and we try to do our homework and prepare ourselves as best we can for what may be coming, for things that, we don't know what we don't know, but at least we understand that, and we try to do our best to get ahead of it with implementing EOS and putting all these things in place that are going to help our franchisees and help us,
Sure.
quite honestly, as well. So any other final thoughts?
No, that was great.
All right, brother. Have a good weekend. Peace.